As a storyteller, quite often the tales you tell, the context, the style and the format will be determined by the places you're telling those stories. For me, that tends to be the Holyrood Kirkyard over yonder, the home of the Ghost Walk for most of the last 30 years, and here at the Old Town Jail. And I think part of the draw there is that you can look in any direction and you'll find stories. With the Holyrood, there are stones there going back to the 16th century. There are graves going back to the 12th. Peculiar engravings, the Ouroboros, the snake swallowing its own tail, the signs of the trades and the incorporations, the death's head. One of my favourite stones in there, which they say every picture tells a story. I'd love to know what the tale for this one is. On the sconce layer is a naked angel playing the trumpet of resurrection with one hand, writing Holy Writ with the other, while balancing its testicles on a skull, tottering on an hourglass, surmounting can-can dancing angels and demons, juggling skulls on one side and serpents on the other. That's not a story. That's RuPaul's Drag Race. So even in a place like that, you have endless avenues to explore. Into that one stone leads you to the whole notions of life and death, the belief systems of the citizens of Stirling, the wealth of someone who can create a 15-foot tall tomb to himself, inheritance rights, the trades, all sorts of things all tie in there. In the jail, well, look around you even on the tower here, we have one of the first integrated heating and ventilation systems in modern construction all around you. And that's part of the fundamental intention of this building, to treat people like human beings. That you didn't simply throw prisoners in a damp and dingy dungeon to freeze slowly to death. You kept them in safe, contained conditions. And in here, quite often you'll find that the cells, the layout of the building will lend itself to interpretations for particular tales, for particular characters, for the intentions of the reformers, Frederick Hill, the Chief Warden, Thomas Hislop, and how that contrasts with Jog Rankin, our old friend, at the toll booth, and the conditions that went before. A location like this is an endless source of stories.
Could you tell us maybe one or two of your favourite stories from the jail?
Well, the jail, this time last year, completely by accident, while looking for blueprints for Thomas Brown's 1840s design of the jail, in the National Archives of Scotland, we found misplaced and completely lost for the best part of the last 40 years, the Governor's Journal. And that revealed any number of stories about prisoners with difficulties, about the struggles of William Forrest, the surgeon for the jail, who's also, we discovered, the brother of the one man guilty of employing body snatchers in Stirling in the 1820s, and one of the key movers and shakers in resolving the cholera outbreak in Stirling within the same period. We're discovering his part in revealing the corruption of a guard here who had conned a prisoner out of a silver pocket watch, promising to pay money and place it in his cubby hole where all his personal belongings were kept, and leaving for a new job without doing so. And the governor at the time, Governor Robertson, a former head guard, followed him and put pressure on him, legally and morally, to resolve that. So you reveal all sorts of little stories that good men who are going out of their way to try and resolve situations. I mean, we think of a Victorian jail, we think of doom and gloom. This place, when you look around it, you'll see white walls, you'll see heating and ventilation pipes. All the cells are south facing, so they're bright on a day like this, a glorious bright winter's day, the cells are shining. And that's, again, what this building is all about. When it goes wrong big time. But you can see the intention, and things like the Governor's Journal, they throw these stories, these characters, and some of the characters, as I say, they're quite remarkable human beings.
And even you were talking about the handwriting in the journal.
Oh yes, we see one of the early governors starts off with the best of intention, very prim and proper, and you can see his slow descent into despair with the obstruction of the prison board, who are trying to undermine the reform system, and his descent also into alcoholism. Quite often the surgeon, William Forrest, would be adding notes to the Governor's Journal, clarifying what exactly the Governor meant, because the scrawl is almost indecipherable. So your little notes glued into the Governor's Journal. Again, very telling. And you can see the pressures put on these people, trying to do their best.
And you'd mentioned about the surgeon, and he sounded like quite a powerful character himself.
He is. I mean, one of my colleagues at the jail refers to him as the baby snatcher, because the surgeon for the jail, if a female prisoner gave birth while she was in prison, she was allowed to keep the child for between 6 months and 2 years, depending on the whim of the doctor. And quite often he is removing the child and giving it over to relatives, or in very rare cases putting the child into the poorhouse, the children's ward there, which sounds very cruel to us, but by the standards of the day, he is a bleeding heart liberal. He's going out of his way. If a prisoner is suffering from what we would now recognise as being depression or other forms of mental illness or mental incapacity, he's quite often trying to direct them towards family care or towards care within institutions that can actually deal with those problems. So in some ways, again, William Forrest is so ahead of his time.
And you mentioned his role in stamping out cholera.
Yes, he's the Forests from the 15th century onwards are among the key families in Stirling. They're bailies, they're senior surgeons. His is very much a family of doctors, and he's one of the key players in resolving the cholera epidemic, which decimated the population of Stirling in the early 19th century. So again, an active man, a forceful character. He's buried in the Holyrood Kirkyard up there, and most people have not heard of him. He's one of the great heroes of Stirling, but very much an unsung hero.
And I love what you had said about him smashing.
There's at least one occasion when standpipes in the street, he recognised them as the source of contaminated water. So,
can you explain to us what standpipes were?
A standpipe would often be a pump in the middle of a street connected to a public water supply, which could be used. People could running water was very, very rare in private homes, so people would go there with a bucket or a jug, fill the water using a little hand-operated pump, and take it home with them, which is fine unless that water happens to be contaminated. He realised it was, and on one occasion, unable to persuade the residents of one Stirling of the danger they were putting themselves in, smashed the top of the standpipe. So yeah, a man who is would not have made him particularly popular amongst those locals at the time, whose relationship to epidemiology would have been very lax. But he did what needed to be done.